Oh my flippin' flip! Sorry for the language, but it's flippin' Troy.
Welcome back to Q Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, unlike the rest of YouTube out there covering Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm here bringing you Time Bandits, Apple TV's latest series. That's right, Apple. I'm loyal to you guys. Now, of course, this is a new hit series created by Taika Waititi and is obviously based on the 1981 Time Bandits film. Now, I will clarify that we're not covering the film here and only touching on the TV series alone. But with that being said, I have mentioned previously about covering some old content, so let me know if you want me to jump on this, and I absolutely will. So let's waste no more time and dive straight into these first two episodes. So hit that subscribe button and let's go. Now the show for me sets the tone straight away with a kaleidoscope effect into the intro as we dive through different pieces of time, breaking away to our title card, Time Bandits. And it's great here to see that it seems like a thread of time is being woven and manipulated by potentially the Supreme Being or someone else. But we get glances at things that are to come, like the Jade Frog and Corn relating to episode 2's story. Our main character, Kevin Haddock, who is in his room, has various things from history, including Egypt, the Greeks, the Romans, Vikings and Mayans. You name it, he's got it. He is obsessed with history. And of course, it's his birthday. Now, by the end of the first episode, I do get strong Matilda vibes from Kevin, and I'll explain why at the end. Now, he actually wakes up his parents, wanting them to go to a special place. But before they do, we get to see some of that great humour that this show provides. When his dad messes with the light above the bed, and he hits the red light, and a little phrase that he just says.
It was intense, that was. Yeah. Wrong note for that.
For me, he just hits the nail on the head with this subtle humour, and this is actually filled throughout. So there's obviously going to be points that I'm not going to touch on, just because there's so much of it, but those ones that stand out to me, I will be mentioning. But anyway, he goes to a place called Woodhenge, which is similar to Stonehenge, but obviously made out of wood, although the posts are concrete. Now, Woodhenge is an actual location, which is said to be slightly different to that of Stonehenge, and although not far from its stone cousin, Woodhenge was said to have been the place of feasts and banquets, separating itself from those Stonehenge theories. His parents are making fun of him, as well as his sister, but he's just too oblivious. He's so into history that he just doesn't see past the insults. And at this stage, I kind of feel sorry for Kevin. They head back home, and before everything starts happening, we notice he's playing Risk, which is a great game. And yeah, he's playing it by himself, but it was a game that I used to play in my childhood, so I respect him. Go on, Kevin. Now this is the point where things start to pick up, as his wardrobe starts to move, and suddenly he enters it, cascading himself onto a beach where we see Vikings running towards him. So he runs back, but ends up heading into his bedroom along with the Viking. Now, of course, he doesn't understand a word this Viking is saying, but then all of a sudden, his room is almost transformed into this lush landscape, where the Viking gets into a small canoe and starts sailing away, and before Kevin can rejoin him, he hits the wall as it reappears in front of him. This is where his parents start telling him about forgetting the past and moving to the future, and they just make hints about him using technology. And his dad says,
No, this is just talking. If you use your phone, you could be chatting to someone else while we're talking, like I am. What are you up to?
Which just then turns out to be him texting his wife, and his wife replies with nothing. Again, just that subtle brilliance. He then goes to bed, and that night is where the intruders enter his room, talking about the Supreme Being. And obviously, this group of people are the Time Bandits. The Supreme Being enters the room, chasing down the bandits who have stolen the map to the universe, and they escape through what looks like an infinite amount of rooms. Kevin jumps down and joins the group, and you actually hear Kevin's dad mention about him playing video games.
You playing video games?
Good, Kevin, very modern.
Which then comes back in episode 2. This is where we get our first main time period as the group all rejoin on the Chinese pirate flagship of Madame Chung. The group enter the year 1810, one of Madame Chung's ships. Now, it's interesting here that actually in 1810 is when she ended her piracy after taking control of her husband's fleet of almost 60,000 pirates in 1807. And she ended her piracy after surprising the government in a surrender bringing unarmed women and children, which eventually allowed her to avoid prosecution. Chung is under attack and the group try to escape on her ship by heading towards the next portal. This is where we learn the map they actually stole was...
It's a celestial chart of the anomalies and portals of the intimately interwoven intricacies.
Of course, we will just call it a map of the universe, but essentially it allows the group to find portals in time and jump through them, making their way to any location throughout the universe. We're then introduced to translation caps, which is interesting to know that actually all of them have some kind of headgear on. At this point, I wasn't quite sure, but you'll notice some of them wear a headband, a hoodie, or even a hat, and I thought this was absolute great detail. The guys jump off the ship and escape to the next location, Stonehenge, which is actually being built. Now, his dad alluded to earlier in the episode that Stonehenge is just a pile of rocks and a gift shop, and it turns out that through a comedic way, it's actually a pile of rocks and a gift shop.
Mini Stonehenges, we're bleeding them dry. Do you want one?
But can also be used as a venue for things like weddings and sacrifices. Now, although no one actually knows the real reason why Stonehenge was built, it is said to have been a sign of power to those during that time, and as Kevin alluded to, a map to the stars, and was actually built around 2500 BC. But again, here the humour really stands out, with those subtle details where the rock falls and they say, oh, there's another one dead. Or when they turn around to the guys and say, pull your fingers out, and they can't because their fingers are literally trapped under a rock. Obviously, Kevin is slightly disheartened to learn that it's just a pile of rocks with a gift shop. But as the group starts to settle down, we get a small introduction to each of them. And then we move down and dive deep into what I can only describe as hell, as we meet his wrongness, who learns the information that the map of the universe is being held with the Time Bandits. Something that he wants to create his own universe where every direction you go is up and everything is covered with spikes. We cut back to the group as they make their way through Troy to steal the Trojan horse. Now, the Trojan horse is a Greek myth which was depicted to be a giant wooden horse that allowed Odysseus and his army to sneak into the city of Troy, putting an end to the Trojan War. But obviously metaphorical. It's just designed for a trick, which I think is some actual epic foreshadowing here, and we may see this come up in a later episode. Will the idea of a Trojan horse be used in one of those final episodes? And of course, during the scene we get to see Cassandra, who is the daughter of the king and queen of Troy, and is actually granted the power of prophecy from the Greek god Apollo, which then, according to mythology, she rejected and turned this power into a curse, meaning that no one would believe her prophecies. So really, everything she says will come true, including Kevin and the group jumping off a cliff, which actually does happen in episode 2, and even saving the universe. And as she said, we will be seeing her again. The group then head through a portal, and we get our first glimpse at a quite terrifying huntress, which was actually a little bit scarier than I thought. I mean, not for me, but for my little boy. We then move over to episode 2, and we start that by the group trying to abandon Kevin in the middle of the Ice Age, 50,000 years before his house was even built. That's right, Bingley in the Ice Age, where the huntress seems to be waiting inside a rock. But they end up heading to Mexico in the classical Maya period, where they are welcomed as strangers by the Mayans, who are most commonly known for their sacrifice, as I mentioned a few moments ago. As the Time Bandits are welcomed with an abundance of fruit and jewels and avocados, we get to meet Sakakuk, who is the Mayan queen dating back to 612, who then advocated the throne to her son, Kinish Janab Pakal I, and, like Kevin, my source material is also Wikipedia. The guys are then taken to the temple to be made into a sacrifice, but it turns out that Kevin was in fact wrong, and the ritual they wanted them to take part in was to eat fruit and watch the sunset. Now, due to being bandits and narrowly escaping a beheading, they end up leaving, and as Cassandra predicted, they jump off a cliff through to the next portal. Here, we cleverly jump back just moments after they all jumped into the infinite number of rooms to escape the Supreme Being. And as they say their goodbyes to Kevin and return everything that they stole when they first met him, the huntress makes her grand appearance and coals his parents. Does this mean that all the lumps of coal that Santa brings to naughty children are just humans that have been coaled? Joking aside, they end up fleeing from the Huntress, and Kevin rejoins the Time Bandits to go back through time and save his parents. Now, we end the episode with Taika Waititi revealing himself from the head costume and walking through a corridor where we see some very strange things like a platypus, beetroot bananas, a stack of prayers, and the strangest thing of all being cherub spice, which in a very weird way was just cherub urine. He then reveals that he's working on something super duper secret, and no one can know, and in true fashion, someone lurking behind him knows everything. But overall, these episodes were great, and like I said, the introduction right at the start sets the tone of the series. Those subtle comedic moments were great, and the show has a lot of historical facts, which I actually really enjoyed. And now you guys have also had the cute dad's slightly above average history lesson. You're welcome. But if you notice towards the start of episode 1, we see all different things. We see him painting a Knights Templar. We see him painting a woolly mammoth. Are these predictions of what we're going to be seeing in the series as we head through different points in time? Obviously, it did have a Mayan temple in the first scene, as well as a man holding a heart, which I presumed was making a sacrifice to the sun gods, which of course is what they're known for. But it turns out that this wasn't quite true. But I like how it was still hinted at, leading to different possibilities where the show can go. Now, some of the unanswered questions at the moment is obviously, why is Kevin's room so special? Why is that the hub for all these time distortions happening? We do hear a couple of nods throughout their journey, where the group of time bandits themselves are discussing the room, questioning that Kevin isn't so special himself. But, as Cassandra says, he will save the universe. So, what makes Kevin and potentially his room so special, and why is he the key to this whole story? And of course, if the Supreme Being is supposed to be good, considering that his wrongness is bad, then why is he chasing the Time Bandits? And what was the Time Bandits' need for the map in the first place? What was the Supreme Being making them do that they wanted to break free and escape? Now, talking about those Matilda vibes at the start, I say this because I asked those questions. Will he eventually get home? And of course, by the end of it, will he want to go home? And, more importantly, will he be missed? Matilda was famous for not being loved by her own parents, yet an adoptive Miss Honey approached her uniqueness. And is this the same for Kevin, as he doesn't really fit in with his family, but yet this group of time bandits are already starting to appreciate his talents? And of course, the Huntress. She seems like a formidable opponent. And with the laser eyes that can turn anyone into coal, I'm very curious how this will play out, and I fully expect the Supreme Being to get annoyed by all of this messing with time. But as always, it's not about me, so let me know in the comments your thoughts on the series. What do you think about the humour with Kevin, his parents, and our time bandits? Do you think our group will be able to go back in time and save his parents? And of course, let me know if you want me to cover that 1981 film for your entertainment. And as always, I'll catch you next time with something new.